folks. Welcome back to another edition of Bullet Points. I'm your host, Kevin Misseri, here with Mike, fine to break down a great six-game stretch for the UB Bulls basketball team, 6-0 here over the last 6 games, 10 of their last 12, Mike. Beside the loss to Toledo and Ohio mixed in there, they have taken care of business. We're going to break that down. We're going to break down the WMU game. Strange game from start to finish. There's been some strange results in the MAC in general. I know you wanted to chat on that, Mike. I know you wanted to touch on what's going around, and definitely wanted to talk about the 15-point first half by Ohio. But before we get into all of that, really appreciate everyone tuning in here today. And we'll just talk briefly about the WMU game. There's not like a crazy amount to break down with that outside of being down 16 points in the first half. Some chuck threes, some mistakes there in the first half that led to some interesting basketball. Bench came in for a little bit, struggled there mightily, struggled on defense before turning it on. So Mike, you were there, you were present with some of the guys, some of the team. What is your opinion being on, sight unseen? Tell us about what you saw there. And, I'll kind of go from like a broadcast, like eye in the sky view.
Yeah, it was a fun atmosphere at Alumni Arena. It was a good crowd for what we've seen so far this year. A tough start. I mean, obviously you don't want to be down 16 to WMU in the first half, one of the worst teams in the country. They looked a little lackadaisical. Were pretty poor on defense early on. Some of that had to probably do with Josh Mballa not having a ton of minutes early on in the first half, but once he got it going, UB started gelling in the second half. They start the last 20 minutes on a 16-3 run, and they honestly had control of that game from that moment forward, led by as many as I think 19, 20 points, started trading buckets with WMU. Thought they were getting a little complacent defensively because they thought the Broncos had no chance of really coming back in the game, and they held on. I think you're starting to see Josh Mballa really start to play the way that you saw last year. Janathan Williams, he had, I believe, 24, 25 points, another big scoring night for him. And Rondo Seguin spreading the wealth. So you're really starting to see this UB team gel. The only issue is they're doing it against some of the bottom teams in the league. And I really don't know if that gives you any more confidence than what you would have had, because until they can show it against Toledo, Ohio, Akron, or Kent State, which they did beat Kent State, but it was a watered-down version early in the season. I don't know what we can really say about this UB team, but the good news is they took care of business, and they're on a roll right now, 6 in a row, 10-4, sitting in fourth place. It's all in front of them to still get a good seed for Cleveland.
And we've chatted a little bit about this. Beside a couple of the teams at the top, that's pretty much everyone's MO right now, is taking care of the bottom feeders. Kent State has done a good job of taking care of teams toward the top. I think you mentioned, Mike, they have the best record against the top four, right? Best top five. So there's that, but mostly these records are 10 plus wins due to the fact that you play Central twice, Northern twice, Bowling Green twice, Eastern twice, Western twice. Most teams are going to maybe drop one of those of the 10 games that you play. 9-1 coming out of there is not the end of the world. UB's game that they dropped was to Miami, coming up on the schedule here in Miami here on Tuesday. So they've already dropped theirs, but other teams have as well. So for the most part, teams are going 9-1, 10-1, 10-1 ish range against these bottom teams, which is fine. You can't, even the good UB ranked team lost to Northern with Eugene German. So those games do happen. You're not going to win 31 games. I don't think anyone here, even at bullet points across UB land or
unless you're Nate Oates' team, 32-4 the 1 year, but no,
they still lost to Northern. And they still lost to Northern.
This is the most lopsided I have ever seen the conference in my decade and a half really following the MAC. You have 5 quality teams, and then the next 7 are just atrocious. And calling Akron a quality team right now is honestly kind of painful to even say that, because they really aren't that great. You have 4 teams that stand out above the rest. Toledo, which is actually struggling lately. You have Ohio, which honestly, what they just did against Kent State is making me reevaluate everything I've said up to this point of the season for the Bobcats. You have UB, and you have maybe the new favorites in the league heading into Cleveland, Kent State. And I say that, you might laugh at me for thinking that, but right now they're playing the best basketball. They swept Toledo they swept Akron. They split with Ohio, and right now we're going to see what UB does against them late in the season here. But right now, you're looking at Kent State and UB playing the best basketball in the conference at this current moment.
And some of it's schedule related. Look, like UB had a difficult start to the run. They had some COVID issues. You started again. You basically started your season with versus Miami team. They had some issues there. They didn't look quite right in that early season game. Played Akron. Some more problems. You had Maceo Jack playing the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5 in that game. You had some interesting things going on there. So they started off in a lump. They started to play a little bit better as you got to Bowling Green, Western, Ball State. And then ripped off 4 there before dropping another 2 to the quality teams there in Toledo and Ohio. They played Toledo really well. They kind of ran out of gas there in the second half. It was tied pretty much the entire game, and then they hit one of those stretches of like 1 or 2 points in a 6 or 7 minute stretch. It unraveled for them quickly when they were right. The game was right there, and then Toledo's very good at home as well. So we'll see how that plays out here 3-on-3-1. So just 11 days, actually 9 days away from the Toledo rematch of a pretty important game for UB if they care at all. I think the one thing that can be said about all of this is that you just said, Mike, there's 5 quality teams. You got the 1-8, so there's no more campus games in Cleveland. You got the 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5, and by all accounts, the 1 through 3 are going to have an easier. I'm not going to say Ball State's a free win. They're probably the best of the rest. I'm not going to say that Miami, that UB's already lost to them, and we've seen some other upsets. But you really want to get in that top 3. We were talking about this. Is there a difference between the 2 and the 3? Not overly, not a huge one, a little bit, but you can't really. You're not going to end the world to try to go from 3 to 2. Though it is likely that you can end in the 2 by winning 5 straight games, right? So to me, UB's likely path could be 2 or 4. Like, I just don't see there's a path that where they beat Kent, but then they lose to Toledo. They might still be in the 4 in those situations. So I do think you need to win out, and then you might be sitting in definitely the 3, but probably the 2.
Everything is weird right now with the way it's shaping up. I think if you're any of the top 5 teams, you're saying, I want to avoid the 4 or 5 game. Because right now, Akron is pretty much a lock to be the 5. You don't want to be playing Akron.
No, you really don't want to. You've lost
at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. That's a tough game. You're going to be facing a larger crowd for the Zips, and it's going to be hard against a team like that, but that is playing in a home court advantage type setting. If you're in the top 3, it really there's not a huge difference between 2 and 3. If you're 2, you're playing probably a team like Miami, Ohio, or Central Michigan at this moment. If you're a 3, you're playing Ball State. You're still playing each other in the next round. So the big goal is to get to number 1, just because you would have that automatic NIT berth just in case you did fall short in Cleveland. But even at number 1, the only real benefit is the NIT berth. I really don't even think seeding matchup-wise is a huge benefit to be the 1 seed, because say it's Ohio and they're the 1 and they play UB as the 4. Well, yeah, Ohio killed UB the one time they played, but do we really think that Ohio's 20 points better than UB on a neutral court? Probably not. It's probably close to an even matchup. If it's Toledo at 1 and then somehow Ohio loses a couple games and they fall to a 4, there's just so many ways it can still play out, where I think regardless of who 1, 2, 3, 4 is, it's going to be more dependent on who your matchup is. Because I'll tell you this, if Toledo's the 1 and Kent State ends up getting the 4, well, Toledo's not going to like playing Kent State in the semifinals after getting swept by them.
No 1 seed is, right? Yeah. No 1 seed really is going to want to play them.
And the one thing where UB's really at a disadvantage is, like you said, they didn't reschedule the Central Michigan game. So even if UB beats Kent State, which would then give them the tiebreaker, if they lose to Toledo, they're still going to fall 1 game behind Kent State because Kent would have to lose again. So it's really put UB at a disadvantage when it comes to seeding, because essentially they have to beat Kent and Toledo in order to move to where they would want to be.
Yeah, and like I said, like if you do some scenarios, it's likely you get up to the 2 with 5 straight wins, 1 being to Toledo. In this scenario, most likely Ohio would be 1, UB would be 2. If you win 5 straight, and you're hoping that Toledo maybe drops 1 more game, which the way that they've been playing as of late, you never really know what could happen there. Like, are they going to take care of business on the road at Western? You'd hope so, but we've seen that Western team showed some fight at times last game against UB, and they've beaten Akron, so there's hope there. But going to Miami, Miami's been pesky at times. Have to come to UB and Bowling Green, so they have a softer schedule. But you're really hoping that winning 5 puts you in position definitely for the 3
Yeah.
and right there for the 2. And you would be able to take over the 2, except for Toledo would have the tiebreakers in all cases. So even if they, split 1-1 because they beat Ohio. So the next would be how well you do against the order of the teams, and then beating Ohio would have given them the tiebreaker or over UB. So luckily in the CMU scenario, that doesn't affect UB when it comes to being tied with Ohio or Toledo. So the only scenario is if the half game behind Kent. There is that scenario. That's the only time that really that extra game does matter. And that's the difference of the 4 and the 3. As we talk about, it's pretty big, but Andy would have to take care of business at home against CMU. Could have been an easier game. But as we know, nothing's a given in the MAC, and it's unfortunate that game won't get rescheduled. Rob wants to know what is the other game that hasn't been rescheduled. They'll make that up on Tuesday, Thursday this week. It's only going to be there's only 2 games in the entire MAC that weren't rescheduled. Ball State was the other one. One of their games isn't going to get played. So UB versus Central and Ball State. Somebody.
But yeah, Northern Illinois was the one game that was
canceled. And they play back to back.
Yeah, so
they're playing back to back, Rob. In the next couple days, home and home actually super weird. 24-26. So this week they'll play in a Thursday, Saturday, home and home with Northern after this Miami game. So kind of getting to the rest of the schedule. We've talked about most of it. Miami on Tuesday, Northern Thursday, Northern Saturday at home against Toledo on Tuesday, 3-1, and then at Kent State there to round out the season on 3-4 on the Friday game. Probably one of the bigger games, probably the biggest game to finish off the season. UB Kent. I'm going to try to see Ohio finishes at Northern. That's not a game.
Ohio's schedule really is they have Akron, and that's about it remaining for them.
So they could lose that and be okay.
Yeah,
I mean
it's just really interesting because we were saying at the beginning of conference play that we were very critical of the losses to Miami, Ohio, and Akron, and people thought we were being a little critical at the time. But we said just losing these 2 games could cost you a chance at winning a regular season title, and just look at how much it's costing them at this current moment. UB has
beating Miami, Mike. They're 11-3.
Yeah, they'd have a chance for the regular season title. And one thing, I am so glad they're on this run right now. But one thing that people are saying a lot on the forums and out there on the internet is, oh, this team is gelling just like they were at this point last year. And I just can't get myself to that point yet, because at this point last year, UB was beating up on a lot of teams that were in the metrics very strong opponents. UB, as we know, last year they entered the MAC championship game on a 7-game winning streak. Those wins included a 20-point win on the road against Ohio, who finished in the top 85, win at Akron, who was 112, a win at home versus Akron, pardon me, a win versus Kent State, another win against Akron in the MAC tournament, and then they beat Miami, Ohio. Those are all teams that were right around that 100 point. And right now, we're seeing them, they're killing teams, which is all you can ask for. They're playing the teams on their schedule. They're killing teams, but they're playing teams that are like 260, 270, 280. And they're doing what they need to do. And the confidence level is rising for me heading into Cleveland. But it really comes down to those Kent-Toledo games. That's going to tell me what I need to know about this UB squad and if they have a chance at winning the MAC tournament. Because now, UB is they lost to Toledo. They split. Well, they haven't split. They beat Kent State. They lost to Ohio, and they lost to Akron. That's not a good record against the top of the league. We need to see that UB can beat the top teams before we can elevate them and say they got a 25-30% chance of winning the MAC championship.
I mean, Mike, look at it. From seed 6 and on, UB has a chance and probably should finish 12-1. Like, that's doing what you need to do. That's about what you want. That's no issues with that. I have no problems going 12-1 against the bottom of the conference. You take that. I sign off on that. The early of the season, that's not the problem. But like you just said, you can't then go 1-4 or some combination of that against a 5 and up. That doesn't bode well for your way you're going into Cleveland. And everyone's saying, only Cleveland's all that matters. I think that anyone with a counterpoint would say, like, you would like to see them go in hot. You don't want to see them losing to Kent and losing to Toledo to end the year and then being like, they're still in Cleveland as the 5 seed, 4 seed. It doesn't matter, 4 or 5, doesn't matter. You're playing Akron. And like, they're right there. Like, all they need to do is all of a sudden rip off Akron, Toledo, Ohio on 3 consecutive nights. I don't know, to me, that's unlikely. And I think that I think, Mike, you've shared some stats on likelihoods of games, and I've seen some posted around as well, on the fan forums. You go check those out. There's a big debate going on in UB land right now, is like, have they proven to be able to win, in Cleveland? What proof is there? What proof isn't there? And there's kind of this debate between a couple people. And it's, it does all wind out to show, Mike, you were talking about the fact that you need to get hot in Cleveland, not just, it might not be who's the best team, all around. It might just be who's the best during the last week of the season. So, 12% chance. I've seen 10%. I've seen some people trying to argue for 20% plus, a likelihood that the UB can win in Cleveland. We probably need to see them finish the season, right? Like, to me, like, I don't want to see them lose any game, but if they lose a Northern, one of the Northern games, and then I'd prefer them win Toledo and Kent and drop Northern. That's my crazy mind to me, because I'd rather them give them both a loss, and then prove that, like, they're good, winning 2 games going into Cleveland. They're in a good spot. That to me drives confidence more than taking care of Northern, and then taking care of Miami. Like, to me, like, I want to see them I want to see them go 5-0, which would in theory be 11-0. Don't know how likely that is going into Cleveland. But if they were to drop one, I'd prefer one of those Northern games and over Toledo and Kent, just to show everyone, like, we're still better than Kent, and we split with Toledo. We had a bad game against Ohio, and we didn't get to play Akron twice. But that puts you right there. That instills confidence. What doesn't instill confidence is taking care of Northern and then going and losing to Toledo and Kent.
Yeah. What's also interesting is you look at what type of style does UB want to play against? So when you look at Toledo, they've been predominantly a 3-point shooting team in the past, but they've actually shot, I don't have the stats in front of me, but from some things I've read online, they haven't been as dependent on the 3 as in past seasons. Ryan Rollins is a tremendous player. Shoemate is incredible. But Toledo has had some struggles in some down games. They've lost to Kent State this year. They lost to Ball State. And then recently, they almost just lost to Central Michigan, a game where the Chippewas had 2 chances to tie or take the lead with under 7 seconds
Heard about that.
Couldn't even get a shot off. So Toledo has shown to be vulnerable. And what happens with Toledo is when they play some of these more physical teams, or their shot isn't dropping, they're so dependent on their offense that their defense doesn't really carry them when their offense isn't clicking. Now, you look at a team like Ohio, their biggest strength is their balance and consistency. But what's really killed teams like Ohio is when they play better competition, a lot of teams, their strategy is to take Mark Sears out of the ballgame. So Sears loves to drive the hoop, and against most of these MAC teams, he gets easy layups and he makes sensational plays. Well, against Kent State and against Toledo, they've been bodying him, forcing him to pass it. And in those scenarios, they need Ben Vanderplas or Jason Carter to step up. And Ben Vanderplas, sometimes he's amazing. He looks like one of the best players in the MAC, but when he's off, he can really be off. So Ohio, what's killing them in these losses is Sears is shooting like 25%, and nobody else is helping them. So if you're playing Ohio, your strategy is don't let Sears get inside. Don't let him penetrate and be able to attack the lane and force one of the other bigs to beat you. You look at Kent, it's all about sincere carry. That guy is one of the elite players in this conference, but Kent they got that magic 70 number. If they score over 70, they're going to beat you. They're going to beat most MAC teams. But their offense is pretty mediocre, but their defense is all over you.
But if you score 70, I don't think they've won yet, right? Have they?
I'm not sure exactly, but the wild card in all this is what type of officiating are we going to get in Cleveland? Because I think that plays a huge role. If the officials are like, we're going to just let them play, that heavily benefits a team like Kent State that's not only going to have a home crowd advantage, but also knows that they can get away with following opponents and get all over. That's going to be tough for anybody to go up against. But if the officials are calling everything, Kent State doesn't have a chance because the officials call every foul. Kent State's going to have other teams in the double bonus every half. And let's be real, they don't have the offense to keep up with other teams that are scoring at a high efficiency. So
Right.
it's not just what does UB need to do, it's what type of officials are we going to get? What's the matchup going to be? There's so many wild cards. And I think the good news about how the last month has played out for UB is that a month ago, you would look at the schedule, look at the way things are shaping out, and you'd say, yeah, it's about Cleveland, but I don't really like UB's odds. I'm going to say Toledo is the favorite and Ohio is the second team. One of them is going to win. Now you look at it and you think there's 4 teams that have a chance. So while you don't like that Kent's now a contender too, you think, okay, there's scenarios where this can play out in our favor. And you look at it with Josh Mbala returning to form, with LaQuil Hardnett finally coming off the bench, adding some productivity, with Skogman being a guy that you can give post touches and feel confident in his ability to finish at the hoop. You have reasons for optimism right now if you're a UB fan. This is a team that is improving. They are playing better. I'll forever have questions about why they got off to the slow start they did at the beginning of the season, but there's reasons to think maybe this team can make a run when it matters. I'm not at the point where I predict it, but I could see a scenario where it could happen.
Fair. And I mean, they struggle early season in a lot of seasons so far under this current organization. So we'll have to kind of see if that's a theme or they kind of figure out how to get through it or get rid of those early season jitters. And really good point here is that, as you look ahead to the schedule, we have a couple of questions here. Someone wants to know about Williamson, redshirt. I don't know if I think that was medical. So he's red.
I was told before the year he was most likely going to be a redshirt. He was dealing with some injuries.
Okay.
At the time.
We'll
That's
see
what
what
I
he
was told.
brings.
I don't know the exact reasoning. Just my source inside the program told me he wasn't going to play this year. You weren't going to see him play.
Okay. So there's that question. Thank you for asking. Obviously always tweet at it. We're actually working on a way to be a little bit more interactive with the show too. So we're gonna come up with some ways that you guys can, chat in. And that's thanks, Dan, for coming in with that question. Also have one, Erie County. Will they win in Cleveland? What odds are you putting them at? What do they need to do against the top 5 teams? We kind of talked about that. We see your debate roaring on there on the fan forums. I'm using, I'm a pretty big guy that likes to use KenPom, a KenPom guy. There's some other sites that up and down team rankings, I think, is on there. Bartovic is another one that's pretty negative on UB. KenPom's kind of in the middle. And then team ranking is kind of positive on UB. So there's kind of a range of analytics, like just looking at it straight up, 10 to 15% is what I'm using. I'm using, let's say on a good day, I'm in the 15% range. That odds go up as the 2 and 3. If they lock in at 2 or 3, that 15 might be looking more like team rankings to me at the 20% mark. But I don't get to the 20s until they clinch that 2 or the 3. I'm not in the 20% range with them playing a run of Akron, Toledo, Ohio, 1, 2, 3. I just don't. So when they need to beat one of them first. There's that. That's going for me. And what do they need to do in Cleveland, Mike? We'll bounce that to you. But to me, consistent basketball. They need to assert themselves as the best team in the MAC that they were supposed to be. They're starting to show. And to me, it starts with these next couple of games to come in pretty hot, take care of business in the regular season to get that 2 or 3 seed, assert yourself against Ball State, be in the semifinals, and be ready and be consistent. You can't have this night where you go out and ball against last year's Akron team, take them to the wire, going to overtime, win in a great fashion, and then Ohio's sitting there rested, ready to go, and you're out of energy. Mike, what do you think needs to happen in Cleveland to kind of to the point being, and then what odds are you putting it at? Looking around the gamut of negative, positive, mediums. Bounce that question to you.
Yeah, so if I'm looking at the odds right now, I have 4 teams that I think realistically could win the MAC tournament. I have to give Akron a little bit of hope just because they have a winning record, but I don't think they really have much of a chance. So I would first start out like Toledo is probably somewhere between 30 to 35%. They probably have a 1 in 3 chance. off the top of my head. So then I'm going to probably say Ohio then has something like a 20. So like if you say Toledo's 35, maybe put Ohio at like 20, 25. So then you're at 60% already taken. I then think I'd probably split UB Kent somewhere between 17.5 to 20%, and then I give Akron 5%, and the whole field is going to be like next to less than 1% combined. That's the way I look at it. I think Toledo's heavy favorite right now, just because when they're playing their best basketball, there's no team better in the conference at this current moment. Ohio has proven to be the most consistent team in the conference, even though they were blown out against Kent recently and also handled both times that they played Toledo, but they haven't lost anybody else in the Mid-American Conference this season. So you have to give them a good odds, because if they can avoid Toledo, say somehow the Rockets get upset, Ohio has shown that they can beat anybody else in the conference. And Kent and UB, I would have them split around 20%, maybe a little bit under, just because those are the teams that have that high upside, that high ability, but you don't know what you're going to get on a given night. Is for Kent, the big X factor is, are they going to get the whistle or are they not? And for UB, the big question is, are you going to get the big three to show up or not? When Josh and Ball is playing the type of ball we've been seeing the last couple games, good luck beating this UB team. They can beat anybody in this conference, and honestly, they could kill any team in this conference the way Josh and Ball is playing recently. He's asserting himself down low. He's playing physical. He's going to get rebounds. You have Rondo Segou penetrating, dishing, finding open guys, and you have Janathan doing his role, and that's just to score buckets. So what does UB have to do to win in Cleveland? They have to do exactly what we've been talking about for the last 3 years. They have to be hot. They have to score. This Bulls team does not play high-quality defense. We can talk about it nonstop. It's not going to change. If we haven't seen it at all this year, the odds of it happening suddenly out of nowhere in Cleveland are very slim. This team is the second best offense in the MAC, according to Ken Pom. Their defense is top 4, but that's just because the defensive efficiency ratings in the MAC are atrocious. But UB is somewhere around 150 to 160 in the country defensively. So what happens, they just have to continue what they've been doing. Just try to outscore teams, because there's not many teams that can keep up with this UB team when they're gelling. And that's what we've been talking about for 3 years. You look at all the weapons on this team. They have so many guys. But what normally kills them is they go on long stretches of dull basketball where they don't score. They get, like, how many times this year we've seen them go on a 5, 6, 7 minute stretch where they score 2, 3, 4 points? They got to avoid that in Cleveland. Easier said than done, but they have to find a way to somehow gel when it matters the most.
And that's fair, Mike. We're hitting the 30-minute mark. We brought some good energy today. I want to talk, a little bit more specifics here on the show next time. We'll try to get in one. We'll try to shoot for Friday to Saturday region. Maybe determine if we want to do a pregame for that Saturday game, or if we want to kind of recap everything, the two northern games and the Miami game. Maybe more of like a Saturday, after everything's all done. Maybe a Friday. We'll chat about it to see what's better. But we'll be coming right back at you in 5 or 6 days here to kind of break down what's happening around the MAC, and probably be pretty close to somewhat of a resolution as we get into those two big games, and what UB will need to do in those two games. We'll kind of chat about that next time on 5 or 6 days here. We'll kind of recap the two northern days, as well as the Miami day. So, follow along with that. We'll try to bring you as much as we can. Will UB hit 9 straight going into that final pretty big stretch? It's possible that they could be 9 straight, staring at the 2 or the 3 seed right in the face.
Dude, I'm putting money on it. You're talking Miami, Ohio, NIU. Miami is 255 in Ken Pom. NIU is 298. These are the teams that UB needs to take care of. And you think about it, UB right now, Ken Pom has them going 19-10, and that doesn't include the game against CMU that won't be made up. So, and obviously UC Irvine was canceled. So before the year, I said 24-7, and that honestly was a horrible prediction. It was nowhere close to being true. But in hindsight, they win these 3 games, and they could somehow find a way to get a win in Kent State or Toledo. You're looking at a possible 20-9 regular season with 2 games canceled where they could have been 21-10, maybe 22-9. So
Who said 22-9? I want to know. I want to know.
I'm not saying this to make you feel better, but the truth of it is, we said that we had this expectation before the year, and despite some egregious basketball at times, they're really not falling far away from what we had picked them to do prior to the season. Uh, right now, 10-4 in conference. I think I picked them to go 15-5 in the MAC. I think you might have been right around there as well. They're shaping up to be right around where we all expected. I think the one thing we didn't anticipate going into the year, though, was that they would be doing this when the conference is having one of its worst years in maybe a decade. So it doesn't feel as successful when you're doing it during a very, very bad year for the Mid-American Conference, which is the 20th ranked KenPom League, below the WAC, the Ivy League, the Southern leagues. There's so many conferences that are the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, for crying out loud, is a spot ahead of the Mid-American Conference in KenPom. So UB is still stacking up those wins, but it's happened that
you would have. I mean, it comes down to what? What are they, 1-3 against the top 5? You would have liked to see that be better. That's all. And maybe they finish 3-3, and that's a little bit better.
If they go on a run, if they can kill Miami, kill NIU, because KenPom cares about margin of victory when you're playing these crappy teams. It's the reason why a team like Iowa is in the top 20 in KenPom, and a team like St. Bonaventure is 87, when they both have similar records against quad 1, quad 2 opponents. Just Iowa kills their opponents. St. Bonaventure squeaks by. But if UB wins out and they take down Toledo, they take down Kent State, their metrics are suddenly going to be around top 85 at that point. So, all things considered, that really wouldn't be that bad for as low as things got at points earlier this season.
It was 500. Yeah, they were 500 after that back-to-back Miami Akron losses just not that long ago. So 500 and 0-2 in the MAC. So you're right. I mean, they had dropped all the way to 120 in the MAC, or in the KenPom rankings. They started at 70. If they win out, and let's say they win their first MAC tournament game, who against whomever, whether it's Akron or Ball State or Central, or Miami, they would probably be higher than that. They would probably crack the 70s going into that semifinals game. With some stuff to be said, that if they take care of the semis and the finals and finish right around that 22-9, that they would then be in position to really be a 12 seed, probably in the upper 70s. So lower 60s.
You want a comparison? Ohio last year was on February 23rd, they were 108 in KenPom. So I believe 6 spots ahead of where UB is right now. They started the MAC tournament at 106. They beat Kent State, which was 115, Toledo 74, UB 77. They entered the NCAA tournament at 82, and they got a 13 seed. So UB is right now 114. You're playing Kent on the road. You're playing Toledo, which is 82.
But Ohio lost games down the stretch, right? They went cold before the tournament.
No, they had the one loss to Buffalo, but outside of that, they had won 6 out of 7, and then they won 9 out of 10 heading into the NCAA tournament. So Ohio did get on a roll late. They just didn't play many games because of COVID, and then they got dismantled by UB in the Convo, which is the one game that we all remember because UB looked like they were well on their way, and then obviously the MAC championship happened. But you look at it, if UB takes care of business, they win these next 3 like they should, and then they find a way. It doesn't matter if they beat Toledo at home, they beat Kent, either one of those, because Kent's on the road, Toledo's at home. They're both going to be pretty similar as far as impact. But if they can split those and then they somehow get to the MAC championship where they beat another top 4 team in the MAC, their metrics are going to be sharp. I mean, you're probably looking at, if UB makes the tournament, assuming they don't lose any of these next 3 games, they're probably looking at around a 13 seed. I would say that's probably pretty safe to bank on. I don't think 14 is really going to be the card unless they somehow struggle against NIU and Miami. But if this team makes a tournament, I think 13 is pretty safe bet at this moment.
Well, winnable. It's a winnable number next to your name. Certainly, as you start to get to the 14, 14 number, it gets a little tougher. The 12 number we know is pretty upset central. So we'll have a lot to talk about, either good or bad here. Probably around Friday, Saturday timeframe. We'll get you a date and time as things progress in the MAC this week, and we'll be back at you probably at a better time zone, time frame. We'll try to get some interaction. We'll retweet this show throughout the week, so you can see this probably up until game time on Tuesday against Miami, Ohio. But they do need to take care of it. Like they do.
I do want to respond to one comment. I'm not
God.
normally respond to the comments like this, but gotta love someone saying we're trying to get the coach fired and we're acting like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless when we haven't mentioned Weitzel once the entire show, and neither one of us have mentioned firing him. Love the interaction, but that's just ridiculous right there.
Where is that coming in from?
Just in the comment section. But like I said, I love interaction, but if someone says something ridiculous like that, I gotta call it out.
I don't think I don't know who says that. Like I don't know what's going on there, Mike. But whether we tell it like it is. We're critical when we need to be, and we say we say what we feel is the right thing to say, and I think we both have some basis behind what we're arguing. But I don't think that's came up from us here on the show. So, we'll see what that means here in the coming weeks. But as of this moment, I don't think either of us have put that kind of statement out. But we have some really important times here, and we're gonna be right back at you here from Bullet Point 716. From the whole team, we appreciate everybody tuning into this run. We hope to make your March special. Get out to Cleveland. They will be playing in Cleveland, hopefully in the 2 or the 3 game later in the day on Thursday, and not in that 4-5 slot. So everyone stay tuned to that as well, coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But more importantly, they have 3 games to get right before the big 2 to wrap things up. And we'll try to get you a show in the middle there, and then we'll get you a show at the end after all 5. So get your show right in the middle after 3, and then after the 5 to kind of preview the MAC tournament. And we'll have all the seedings, all the updates, all the numbers. We'll probably talk a little bit more about analytics and paths and exact percentages at that point once we kind of see what Akron is and Kent if they finish this run or not. Ohio if they can figure it back out, and if Toledo looks a little bit better. So we'll bring you all of that coming up in the end of 2 weeks. But at the end of next week, we'll recap these 3 games. Appreciate you, everybody, from listening to this for 40 minutes. But from Bullet Point 716, Kevin Misseri, Mike Bunt, we'll be bringing you the best UV action that we can, unbiased, realist, negative and positives. Like, we want to bring you it all, and we will surely do that. Tune in, follow along, and we'll chat with everybody shortly. But for now, it's good night now.